Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, back with more crazy people stories. In this video, a bunch of ridiculous squatters impersonated me and sold my house while I was absent. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So my house is a cozy 2-story home with a welcoming front porch and a small backyard. It has 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a kitchen with modern appliances and a home office where I can work comfortably. I work as a project manager for a construction company, and last year I had to relocate temporarily for a major project in another city. The project required me to be on site for 6 months, overseeing the construction progress and managing the team. Although on my way back home I got a call from one of my neighbors asking if I had sold my property. I got worried and said no, I haven't, because I was out of town for 6 months, and he told me that recently he saw people coming in and out of my house, and today his wife informed him that apparently someone had bought the place. I was anxious the whole ride home, and when I finally approached my house I could immediately tell that something was wrong. The curtains were drawn, but I could see lights on in the bathroom on the first floor. I talked to my neighbors and they said there was a good chance squatters had taken over my place and took advantage of my absence to not only impersonate me, but also fraudulently sell my house to an unsuspecting buyer. They also told me that they were not sure if that was exactly what happened, but based on what they've seen for the past few days, this was the only plausible conclusion. So I immediately decided to confront the squatters. I realized that was not the wisest decision because these people could be carrying weapons or something, but I was running on pure adrenaline. At first, when they saw me, they tried to intimidate me and run me off my own house, but when they realized I wouldn't leave, they started accusing me of trespassing and saying how they have not committed any wrongdoings and claim to be the actual owners of this house. I told them to stop with the lies and immediately get out and tell the buyer that this place was mine and I would not press charges. But that only got them laughing and saying how someone like me could not harm them. I stepped forward because I was mad as hell when one of them, a burly man with a gruff voice, stepped forward, blocking my path and warning me to leave before they called the police. I asked them to go ahead and call them, which made them mad, and I saw one of them going inside the kitchen. I didn't stay to see what he was gonna bring and came back out where my neighbor was and dialed for the police. I explained the situation, emphasizing that these individuals had not only unlawfully occupied my home, but had also fraudulently sold it. The police assured me that they would send officers to the scene immediately. Seeing that I was not alone, the squatter who was coming out with a knife closed the front door. I could hear them fiddling around inside and then heard the garage opening. I was quick to grab my phone and managed to snap a picture of their van's license plate before they sped off. With the evidence in hand, I called the police again, informing them that the squatters were attempting to flee. Thanks to the information I provided, the police were able to track down the squatters' van. After a brief chase, they managed to apprehend the squatters. I was informed that they were being arrested to the station as the other officer took me and my neighbor's report. When I went to the station with them, I wasted no time in filing a lawsuit against these people. I also included the person they had sold my house to, as their involvement in the illegal sale was clear. Meanwhile, the squatters kept shouting how I was a lying piece of crap and that they had a right to be in my home and insisted that the sale was legitimate. About an hour later, the buyer arrived, confused and bewildered by the turn of events. He had believed that he had legally purchased the house and was unaware of the fraudulent nature of the sale. As the squatters and the buyer sat in separate rooms, I listened as they tried to defend their case. The squatters continued to insist that they had a right to be in my home, while the buyer maintained that he had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. I knew I needed expert legal help here to reclaim my property. I sought out a skilled real estate attorney who had experience dealing with similar cases. Our first step was to gather evidence to support my claim as the rightful owner. We obtained notarized copies of the deed to the property, which clearly showed my name as the owner. Additionally, we gathered property tax records, utility bills in my name, and affidavits from neighbors who could attest to the fact that I was the true owner of the home and had been away temporarily for work. The process of gathering evidence was meticulous and thorough. We made sure to cross-reference all documents to ensure their accuracy and validity. The affidavits from neighbors were particularly helpful as they provided first-hand accounts of my ownership and temporary absence from the property. The squatters attempted to deflect blame by accusing me of forging documents and trying to frame them. However, we had already enlisted the help of a forensic handwriting expert to analyze the forged documents. The forensic expert's analysis conclusively proved that the documents presented by the squatters were indeed forged. The expert's report highlighted inconsistencies in the handwriting and signatures, clearly indicating that the squatters were responsible for the fraudulent documents. After a few months of back and forth, the court finally ruled fully in my favor. The judge nullified the fraudulent sale, affirming me as the sole rightful owner of my home, and issued an order forcing the false buyer to vacate the property immediately. In addition to reclaiming my home, I was also awarded significant damages from the squatters. The court ordered them to compensate me for my legal fees, lost rental income, and emotional distress. To rub salt in the wound, the squatters' ill-gotten gains from the fraudulent sale were also seized. This meant that they were not only removed from my home, but also stripped of any financial benefit they had gained from their illegal activities. Furthermore, the squatters faced extensive legal consequences for their brazen fraud and theft, and the charges against them, including criminal impersonation, forgery, filing false documents, grand theft, and fraud, carried severe penalties. Following the court's ruling, the ringleader of the squatters was charged with multiple felonies, including criminal impersonation, forgery, filing false documents, grand theft, and fraud. Apparently, he already had multiple charges against him that were ongoing, and this just strengthened the case against him. After a thorough trial, the ringleader was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 6 years in state prison. Additionally, he was ordered to pay additional restitution to me, further compensating for the damages he had caused. 2 of his accomplices, who had played lesser roles in the scheme, pled guilty to slightly lesser charges. Actually, they received jail sentences for 2 years that I think were later brought down to 1, but I don't know because I lost any involvement in the case after the squatters got jailed. After the legal battle, the buyer, who had unknowingly purchased my house through the fraudulent sale, lost his court case against me too. The court rejected his claim to my house, recognizing that the sale was illegal and fraudulent. Realizing that he had been deceived, this buyer then decided to take legal action against the squatters too. He filed a lawsuit in an attempt to recover the money he had paid them for the property. It was clear that he had naively trusted the squatters without doing proper due diligence before purchasing said house. As stressful as the situation was, I'm satisfied that in the end it was dealt with, even though it took some time, money, and patience. My attorney was outstanding and I owe him so much, even though I know this is his job and I paid him for it, but still, I'm just immensely relieved that I was able to reclaim my house, and I have now installed motion sensors and other cameras after consulting with my attorney on what I can do to prevent any more squatters from breaking in my place. And the next one is titled, Teaching an Awful Manager a Lesson. And by the way, if you have enjoyed this story so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. Almost 10 years ago, I worked at a company where my department analyzed survey and secondary data, compiling it into handbooks each quarter. After 6 months of joining the department, my manager, who joined us 2 months after me, reorganized our tasks in an attempt to improve our efficiency. This manager was promoted internally and was notorious for kissing up to management. He was technically not qualified for the promotion due to a different background required for our department, but one of the C-suite members liked him a lot. He did have some expertise in other areas, but generally he had an unpleasant personality, so many people in the company didn't like him much. Along with 3 new projects, I was assigned the handbook task for the first time. The meeting was in February, so my first handbook would be for that year's Q1. In the meeting, I also asked my colleague who had managed the project for 4 years to explain the usual timeline. She said it took 6 months, a time frame agreed upon by management for years, considering the person handling it, which would also have other important projects. This means for Q1 data, the printed copies of the handbook need to be ready by 30th of September. The 6-month period includes collecting the analysis from survey managers, and for secondary data, I would have to contact the data owner and do the analysis myself. I also have to work closely with the outsourced company that does the design and printing. I carried out the handbook project smoothly along with my other tasks, and by late July, the only thing left for me to do was to proofread the content. The next procedure required me, my manager, and the designer to review and finalize every page before sending it to the unit head for approval. Printing and delivery take about 2 to 3 weeks, so we aim to submit the design by mid-August and confirm the final version for printing by the last week of August. However, on the last Friday of July, a whole 2 weeks before our target timeline to send the design to the unit head, this conversation happened. Manager: OP, I need you to finalize everything today because we are sending the design to the unit head on Monday. Me: next Monday? Why? We have 2 weeks. Manager: well, the unit head wants to see some changes around here, so I thought we could speed up the publication of this handbook to start. I told the unit head we would send the design to her on Monday. Me: okay. Well, you could have discussed this with me first. I mean, the proofreading is almost done. I can get it done by today, but we still need to sit down with the manager to finalize and sign off. The appointment is in a week. Manager: can you do it tomorrow? Go ask the designer. Now, it was not normal in our company to come to the office and work on weekends, and of course I already had a plan for that weekend, so this was really annoying to me. At least I knew that the designer would have no issue moving it to the next day because he is very cooperative. Me: I can try, but tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not sure if he can make it. And are you sure we want to rush this? Because even if we meet the designer tomorrow, the hard copy will be delivered just 2 weeks earlier than the normal deadline. Is it that significant? Manager: yes, just go ask the designer now. So I called the designer, and as expected, he had no problem meeting on Saturday. Me: Mr. Manager, the designer is okay to meet tomorrow. Is 10 AM okay with you? Manager: huh? Puzzled look. Me: you also need to be there for the sign-off. Manager: I do? Me: yes, you literally need to sign off on the final version to send to the unit head. It's the normal procedure. And to be honest, he did not need to be there aside from the following procedure. He already had seen the design a few times and likely would not have contributed much to the meeting. I would have loved for him to not be there anyway. But at that point, I was quite excited to make him come to the office on the weekend when he obviously did not realize that he also had to be there with the designer. Manager: I can't tomorrow. I'm going somewhere until Sunday. Me: well, if you want to send this to the unit head on Monday, then you have to be there tomorrow. Manager: let me get back to you. About half an hour later, he came up to me with the sourest face ever. 10 AM tomorrow is fine, and walked away. I'm guessing he must have pissed off someone when he had to change and cancel his weekend plan, so the next day he came in 1 hour late, not smiling at all, and was rude to the designer and me. He was really unhappy to be in the office on that day, but we got it done by 1 PM. The following week, the story of how I made my manager come to work on Saturday was told around the company. Apparently, the plan that he had for the weekend was a group trip with some of his buddies who also worked in the company, and he had to make new arrangements to get to the place by himself and arrived late. A lot of people thought it was really funny, including the unit head and some of his buddies, and laughed at the image of him walking into the office on Saturday for some trivial yet necessary work. Nevertheless, the next 2 years that I worked on the handbook, he never promised anyone to have the handbook ready before the 6-month timeline. And the next one is titled Petty Revenge on Crazy Customer. So, several years ago, I worked the late shift as an online customer support agent for a woman's clothing company. The other CSAs and I were constantly mistreated by crappy customers, and our managers did absolutely nothing to support us. The company valued its customers so much that the rules for dealing with them were disgustingly lax. For example, this one guy would call in, obviously touching himself, but we were not allowed to hang up on him because he never actually said that he was. We had a 3-strike policy where a customer could say pretty much anything they wanted to 3 times before they were disconnected and banned. But we also had a 1-day turnover policy where if a customer was cut off for inappropriate behavior, the ban was reset the next day. So basically, someone could come in, tell that you're a bitch 3 times, get kicked off, and then come and do it again the next day. The entire time I worked there, I never saw a single person get permanently banned. Not even the touching himself guy. I eventually ended up quitting specifically because a customer harassed me to the point of me crying, and my manager's response was that I could have had an unpaid 10-minute break now instead of my 15-minute break later. Yeah. One of the worst customers was this woman we will call Kathy or Kathy. This woman would enter our CSA chats around midnight, drunk, she admitted to this, And she would ask questions like, "What jeans do you think go with this top?" While the CSA answered, Kathy would say things like, "Wow, this is taking so long. Imagine working a minimum wage job at midnight. Bet you wanna F yourself." Warning number 1, the next time it would get a little worse. "Wow, you're such a loser. Have you ever thought about ending yourself? I would if I was you." Warning number 2, the last time each night it would be something like, "I hope you die. You're so sad. You should F yourself." At that point we would let her know that we could no longer help her and we would disconnect her, and then she would pop back in chat within a few days and the whole thing would start over. She always said the same kind of things. She clearly knew she could say 3 separate terrible things to us. Our managers never helped or stepped in. I once looked this woman up. I wanted to know who she was, and to my surprise, I found out that she was a therapist. She had her own practice. I was baffled. What she did was a horrible, cruel, unkind thing. I could not believe a therapist would do this. I later quit working at the company. I waited a few weeks and then I made a phone call to Kathy's practice. I spoke to Kathy. I told her that I was seeking therapy. During our intake call, she asked me what kind of issues I was facing. Well, I said, I do this really weird psychotic thing a few nights a week. I get really drunk and I start a chat with minimum wage customer support agents and I tell them multiple times that they should F themselves. That is so crazy, right? She made a tiny noise, a moment passed and the call disconnected. My friends at the company said that she never messaged them again. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So my wife, 35 female, and I, 35 male, have been together for 10 years, married for 5. We grew up completely different. She's the only child of a surgeon father. Her mom died when she was 2, and it was her and her dad for most of her life. He remarried when she was 17, he is wealthy, sent her to private school, paid for her college, and when we met a decade ago, he was still paying her rent even though she had a solid job. I myself come from a poor family, but we have both pretty good jobs and make around the same amount of money now. She is such a daddy's girl and it's been affecting our relationship. Anytime she wants or needs something, she goes to her dad first, and sometimes it's about things that I could help with. I work in tech, and back when we started dating, she was starting grad school and she asked her dad, "What laptop should I get?" I told her I actually work in the field, which she already knew, and could easily answer that and get her what she needs, and she just kind of shrugged. Okay, fine, these little things have happened throughout the last decade, but there have been bigger issues recently. For example, last year, she decided she needs a new car. I disagreed. Her car is actually fine and she works from home and barely drives. She was adamant though. About a month later she tells me she's getting a new car. I told her we need to make these decisions together and we share finances, and this is a major purchase. She says, "Oh, my dad is buying it. He said we can just sell mine and get some extra money." I told her it's kinda ridiculous to ask her dad to buy her a brand new car when she has a perfectly good one and we don't need it anyways. She got upset and said it's not that big of a deal and her dad does not mind and that the car was not that expensive anyways. She said I'm overreacting and that it's okay for her dad to do nice things for her. She got a brand new 2022 car completely paid for by her dad, and we then sold her old one. Now we are buying a new house and we have finally narrowed it down to 2 options. We were discussing it last week and my wife says, "Oh, I don't think house A is good. My dad said he'd think we could do a lot better in our budget." Before she talked to her dad, she loved house A, so I got a bit frustrated and said it didn't matter what her dad thought because this is our family's home and he won't be living there. She got angry, we started arguing, we both said mean things. I called her a spoiled brat and said that she needed to grow up, and she got upset and slept in the guest room, and it has been a few days and we have barely spoken. She said I was so mean to her, and that was it. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? And yeah, Ripestories, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Comment number 1, you're the a-hole. You sound super insecure about her father. Take a moment to reflect that you're on Reddit complaining she asked her dad for advice on a laptop. You are jealous, that's all there is to it, and it's pathetic. Instead of worrying about her relationship with her father and calling her names, why are you not using rich FIL to your advantage? Like, you actually started a fight over getting a new car neither of you had to pay for. It's just insane. Comment number 2, you're the a-hole. You need marriage counseling to deal with both your issues. This is a great way to lose your marriage otherwise. So deal with your issues instead of hurting your wife. You show nothing but mild contempt for your wife here. And now we got an update to the story. Wow, I didn't expect this get so much attraction. This was mostly a late night stream of consciousness and I realized I left a lot out, of course. I did apologize to my wife for the name calling, and we both agreed we have some issues to work through. Here's some more info for context and to answer some questions I've seen asked. Yes, we could have afforded the car on our own, we do well for ourselves. I was not worried about not being able to afford it, I just did not understand the rationale of buying a brand new car when you have a perfectly good one. Her old car was not even that old, it was a 2019 and had pretty much all of the same features her new one has. It did not make sense to me. Also, we have a toddler and it's actually harder for her to get him in the new car than the old one. She also barely drives. I mean seriously, the car sits in the garage 90% of the time. She has even said before that she hates driving. Sure, it was free, but I guess it's more about the principle than the car itself. Anyway, she got what she wanted, so whatever. We've been together 10 years. Has it always been this way? Why did I stay? Valid points, and something I could dig deeper on. No answer right now other than I just fell in love and didn't want to leave. Do I have my own daddy issues? No, not really. My dad and I are fine, my parents are still married. We were very poor growing up and my parents undocumented, and that was a very stressful way to live, but my family made it work. I live on the other side of the country now, so I don't see them as much, but we talk and visit regularly. My father-in-law is a nice enough guy, and for what it's worth, he also says his daughter is spoiled and has made comments throughout the years about it. Obviously, I didn't need to call her a spoiled brat, and I recognize the difference in her dad saying it and me, but I'm not the first person to say it to her. I know that doesn't make it right though. I recognize that I have my own issues due to poverty, drama, and all of that. I've been to individual therapy, that is a forever ongoing process. The house, all of the reasons my wife gave me are just matters of personal preference, like, my dad says we need a bigger kitchen, my dad says we need a bigger backyard. He is also convinced that we will have more children, even though we said we don't want any more, and he also said we need more rooms for more kids. Nothing about safety of the house, the price, etc., just things he personally doesn't like or would have different in his own home. Also, we've been looking for over a year and he has given his thoughts many times throughout the year. So I'm not saying she shouldn't ask him for advice. Also, no, he would not be paying for any of the house. My wife has never been to any type of counseling in her life. When I suggested grief counseling for her after I started my own, she looked at me like I said something ridiculous. Her family is very skeptical about therapy. So I'm not sure if I will get her to do marriage counseling, but we will talk about this further. Finally, my wife is a funny, creative and beautiful woman, she's a great mom, and she makes everyone laugh. I do love her despite what the post may make some of you believe. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripestories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.